Today's show is going to be on intermittent fasting and a fascinating study on if intermittent fasting, without counting calories, beats calorie counting in terms of helping people lose weight, not just in the short term, but over a year's time. One of the reasons why studies are sometimes a little bit misleading, especially in terms of weight loss or calorie counting, etc., is that, and I've done shows on this, so I'll link them up here, when you only do a study over 6 weeks or 12 weeks, you don't actually get to see if the results stick. And so I've done shows on the TV show The Biggest Loser and where people are at 5 years, 6 years later. And to be honest, the results are not good. If you haven't heard those shows, I'll link them up here today. StephenCabral.com/2791 for today's show notes, plus the 3 big takeaways from today's show and the research articles as well from today. Now, again, those 6 year later studies from the Biggest Loser, really detrimental because not only did it not work, you'll actually get to see how low their metabolism dropped, which is actually much more detrimental. So now when we look at today's study, what we're looking at, and I thought it was very well done. And so I always like to call out a study that's well done. And this was literally just published just about a couple months ago maximum. And so what they wanted to see is, can people lose weight with intermittent fasting over a year if you never ask them to count their calories? So that's an interesting thing, right? Because you're taking people and you're not even telling them what to eat. That's it. Like literally you're not telling them what to eat. So you might have a company like a Weight Watchers that does calorie counting or uses points or whatever it might be. And what they said is, we're going to do this. We're going to take 3 groups. One group is going to only be able to eat between the hours of 12 p.m., so noon, and 8 o'clock. And they actually updated that after 6 months. I'll talk about that in just a moment. And then there's going to be a second group. And this second group, well, they're going to reduce their calories by 25%. All right, so that's what they're going to do. Eat the foods they want, reduce it by 25% on a daily basis or over the course of a week. And there's going to be a third group where nothing is done. That's just the control, because you need a control to see if they lose any weight, right? Because if the control loses weight, well, then it could have just been part of the overall study, and being studied itself, right, can cause you to get a specific result. So this is what they did. After 6 months of people in the first group only being able to eat between the hours of 12 and 8, that means that, again, they could eat whatever they wanted and as much as they wanted at noon to 8 p.m. Now, they couldn't eat after 8 p.m. That's a big takeaway. I'll go back to that in a moment. And they didn't have breakfast, right? So there's nothing in the AM. The other group, they had the 25% caloric restriction, and they had to maintain that, okay? And then the last group, they just kept doing what they were doing, which is basically just living life, right? So now after 6 months, though, this was an interesting part to the study. The researchers allowed the 12 to 8 group to move their hours that they wanted to be 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's a game changer for a few reasons, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But the end of the study found this. And these are not massive results, okay? So I don't want to say that they are, but it's a start, especially since the people in the study didn't have to change the foods they were eating. They just changed either the amount in the second group or the timing in the first. So the first group with the intermittent fasting, they lost 10 pounds and kept it off over the course of the year. The second group that was calorie counting lost on average 12 pounds. And the third group didn't lose any weight. Now, in the study, they found the 10 to 12 pounds to be statistically insignificant, which just means that they were basically close enough to almost be equal. And some people lost more than 10 pounds, obviously, and some lost a little bit less. And same with the 12-pound group, they lost a little bit more, a little bit less. So I personally wouldn't say that it's statistically insignificant. I would say that 20% is not insignificant. Under 10% would be statistically insignificant, but I can understand why they said that and how they were looking at it in this study. Now, the key takeaways here were this. Each group ended up reducing their total calories per day by about 400. And why that's important is that one group had to calorie restrict on purpose. And sometimes that's difficult to keep up with because you feel like you're being restricted. Now, the 12 to 8 group and eventually 10 a.m. to 8 group also, they found when they looked at their food journals, on average, reduced their previous calories by 400. And the reason was fairly simple. They cut out one meal for the most part earlier in the day. However, they believed, and I believe this as well, that even once they brought back to 10 a.m., so they could eat at 10 a.m., a 1 p.m., and let's say a 6 or 7 p.m., is that the late night snacking was now gone. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. The most detrimental calories we eat are actually after 6 p.m. They really are. Now, I know that they chose this window specifically from noon to 8, and the researcher, which I found to be phenomenal as well, actually said it would be better to stop eating earlier in the day, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, but they just said that's not realistic for most people. They're just not going to do that. But if you can say 8 o'clock, it still cut out the late night snacking. And I love that. That's smart. I mean, that's a great, if you're a practitioner, sometimes your clients will be able to buy into the plan of stopping eating by 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, but sometimes they won't. And if they've been going to bed at 11 p.m. at night or so, well, stopping eating at 8 might be a good first step, level 1, phase 1 of moving up. And so that was important. No more snacking after dinner. That was the key takeaway if you ask me anything, because if you look at it, it might even just be, your favorite chocolate or a little bit of this here and there. All those calories do end up adding up. And if you're layering those on top of your regular meals, well, then all the caloric restriction then is for naught. So I found this to be really important. The last thing is this. I like that the reasoning for them starting out with 12-8 was that there would be that restricted window, but then they knew that most diets were difficult to stick with, which is why they did this in the first place. So they said, we're going to open it up now to 10 a.m. And that's actually what we do in our practice. So people that are looking to take advantage of 16 hours a day, now again, we've done this for years, and I always say that myself, my colleagues, it's not just me. I always want to say we're not in a silo over here, right? Like there's practitioners all around the world that are doing this. But for years, we've realized that for people that are looking to do 16-hour intermittent fasting, and I've shared the studies with you, fasting till noon, it seems to be detrimental in the long run for longevity. It really does. I've shared with you the all-cause mortality. I've shared with you, we don't even know always why these things happen. But let's say it's 10 a.m. Okay, so at 10 a.m., and part of the reason is cortisol levels just continue to be exacerbated, but that's not on today's show. And so what happens is, if you can eat breakfast at 10 or so, and you can do your lunch at 1, and then you can do your dinner at 5 or 5:30 or so, now you've got nicely spaced out meals, allows the blood sugar to settle back down after each meal. You can still get in the amount of nutrients that you need, and you really don't feel deprived. And so eventually, if you can change your window of eating, if you're only doing 8 hours, and it doesn't have to just be 8. I mean, that works great for some people, and for some, they're better at doing 14 hours overnight, which is what I do. But again, if you want 14, great. The window seems to be best, though, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And if you can do that, the results in a positive way continue to compound. And it's not just for weight loss, because eventually everybody meets their ideal weight. And when you do that and you've achieved that, intermittent fasting, in my opinion, is more for health. It really is. You're going to balance healthier levels of inflammation. You're going to balance healthier levels of hormones. You're going to sleep better if you're not eating as close to bed. Like, all of these things matter, especially as you get older. You see a lot of people doing things in their 20s and they see no detrimental effects. I get it. When you're in your 20s, you've got a lot of leeway. I mean, you really do. I definitely, I wasn't even healthy most of my 20s, but you take that for granted. I mean, you really do. And as you get older, you still have resilience. It's not that you don't. You can still stay super healthy. I feel like literally I get healthier each and every year, and I don't want to take that for granted, but that your recovery, because your deficiencies essentially, or your vital reserves go a little bit lower, you're just more prone to more inflammation. So the goal is, obviously, you want to keep yourself healthy. And I do believe that intermittent fasting should be something that you're using throughout your life, whether it's just 6 at night to 6 in the morning, or 6 at night to 8 in the morning, which is what we try to recommend in our practice, which we've seen for basically everybody, as long as you're going to bed at 10 and you're waking up around, 5, 6 o'clock, whatever it might be. 7 o'clock and you don't eat till 8, that seems to work really well. But if you want to push it a little bit more, especially if you're not even waking up till 8 o'clock, well, then 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock could be exactly what you're looking for. And we actually use that in our Fatlocity weight loss system. If you are looking to use a weight loss system, you can certainly check that out. And that's just at stephencabral.com/Fatlocity. But I do believe that any health-based system should include some level of intermittent fasting, and you'll just base that on where you are right now with your blood sugar levels. If they're too low, well, you might not be able to do a 14-hour, 16-hour intermittent fast. Understood. But once you get things balanced, somewhere around 14 hours on a daily basis seems to be a sweet spot for most people. And then once a week, you can do a longer intermittent fast, maybe even twice. And then every quarter, you can use a 2 or 3 day, like we just did a fall functional medicine detox with Equalife. You could do that. And then even on a yearly basis, you could do an even longer one. So what I'll do is I'll link up the 4 types of fasts at today's show notes, and you can learn more about a daily, a weekly, a quarterly, and a yearly fast, which are different, and they should be different. And you can find that at stephencabral.com/2791. I'll link up the study, and I'll link up the 3 big takeaways, plus additional intermittent fasting based shows if you're new to this topic. All right, take care, everybody. Have an amazing rest of the day. Please do feel free to share the show with anyone you believe it could serve. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.